Hello, everybody. This is the ninth episode of the 8-Bit Hangout, and it's been a long week of a lot of bickering, a lot of back and forth, a lot of immaturity, if some would agree, to some degree. And we've decided to take a short break from all that news and all that clutter to talk about something that kind of expands beyond just video game news and announcements. And I think it's time we take out a show to talk about women in video gaming. And this expands beyond characters and everything, even like the developer side and things like that. Overall, though, what do you guys think about women in the video game industry?
Alright, so we should probably start with Nick, being that he posted about it today. So,
yeah,
I don't even know, man. Where do you start?
well, I mean, I took a class that dealt with the history of video games and sort of, I guess, looking at the history purely on a character standpoint, not on a developer basis, but stuff like video game characters, Shigeru Miyamoto basically helped start the whole damsel in distress, I don't even know what to call it, trope, with Donkey Kong, because, I mean, you're Mario trying to rescue Peach, even though they weren't actually called that then. And it sort of continued on from there, and now the guy who basically, not intentionally of course, started the whole trope is just like, well, we make games, we make characters based on the gameplay because that's what Nintendo sells, is how awesome their gameplay is. And so they're like, I mean, he said it's basically fully within the realm of possibility they make an all-female like lead rescuing a man. He even went into sexuality, having someone who's homosexual rescuing another man. He said as long as it works with the gameplay, they would implement it. And
do you agree with that?
Do I agree with that?
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of the sexuality or anything, I don't care. It's whatever you want to do. But as long as I hate it when people do it as a fan service. They throw in someone who doesn't belong in the game purely to make a critic happy. It normally ends up not working and ends up backfiring. And so as long as it works, I really don't care what kind of protagonist, antagonist, whatever they have.
Yeah.
I guess a good example would be Shovel Knight, which is coming out in September. Since they got way more than their stretch goals required, they're doing a gender swap mode where you can be a female Shovel Knight rescuing your guy, the guy from the Enchanter instead of the Enchantress. Yeah. Swaps all the genders in the game of the main characters. And that works because
that is interesting.
It's not just a critic service. It's more just to provide variety to the game and open it up. And so, I mean, I fully agree with Miyamoto, just because as long as it works, do it.
I think a lot of it has to do with the times too. And I mean, I don't mean to criticize Miyamoto or anything, but if it were Mario saving another man in 1986 when Super Mario Brothers came out, I think it'd be a different story. But I mean, nowadays it probably wouldn't matter
because it's so much more open.
Yeah, everyone's more open and more respectful. Well, most people are more respectful to other people. I don't think it would matter too much. But back then, if it was Mario saving Luigi and they weren't just brothers, I think that it would cause a problem, especially back then because video games were so new and people, would shit all over them all the time. So I think that was the last thing they were probably trying to do, was upset people based on other things. So I think it was I mean, games have always been under criticism. I think the easy route to go is just the standard, man saves the woman has been the story for God knows how long, like King Kong, like that's basically what they got the entire Mario franchise from, was from King Kong.
I would argue too, though, that it's a little too late to change some of those Nintendo games. It's to the point where Nintendo's kind of like the Walt Disney brand, where those characters are already locked into their roles. And and that part of that Gamasutra article that this whole conversation kind of spins off of, one of those stemming points was we've included female characters in the Mario Kart series for a long time, and that's literally the least gender hierarchy involving game in the world. It doesn't matter who you play as.
I don't
The
think they
only,
considered putting women into Mario Kart just to say, all right, we need some women. I think they were like, shit, we don't have enough characters to have a big enough
Yeah,
roster to have
yeah,
a big,
and
Mario Kart game.
then something that the Game of Sutra article also referenced a Kotaku article. They talked about um, how Peach in the first Mario Kart was a light class racer like Yoshi or whatever, and then how it pointed out that it wasn't like they're like, oh, women, because there's not like a woman, a female character who can compare with, like, say, the heavy class with like Bowser or whoever.
yeah.
And so there is, I mean, just playing devil's advocate, you can point that out. So
Out, even outside of Nintendo, though, I think other companies are doing a better job of making. I don't think anyone's made it like a cut and dry, like women are on par with the man in the video games, like in the genre or in any video game at all. Like every time a woman is portrayed as like the almighty protagonist, there's always like huge shitstorm over like her role, whether or not she's given enough power, if she's given like a lot of what I want is like a lot of vulnerabilities and whatnot. I know
yeah,
like Crystal Dynamics Laura Croft, that was like the whole no one really cared about the game so much as they cared about whether or not Laura was gonna be like some kind of like sex kitten like she was in the 90s. Like
Oh man.
oh my
And
god,
I don't mean to sound ignorant or anything when I say this, but when I play a game, like there has never been a moment where I'm playing a game and I played most of the Metroid games, but I've never sat there and gone, I'm playing as a woman. I've never, like, essentially when I'm
yeah.
playing a game, the character I'm playing is either me or they're just like a floating head with arms and a gun, like just walking around. Like,
No, totally.
I mean, I don't think anyone walks around going, I wonder how this situation would have affected a female or male protagonist instead of, this or the other. I
Yeah,
don't know,
unless you're
like,
like unless the dialogue is just blatantly like Leisure Suit Larry where it's just like there for its own good, like
yeah,
to literally draw the lines, then I'm with you. I mean, I generally don't think about that kind of thing while I'm playing.
right. And I was playing Tomb Raider way back in the day, and I never even, I never considered like this is a woman doing all this. I just, this is a video game character. It's not. To me, it doesn't really. It matters, but to me, it doesn't matter.
I
Overall,
would
in the scheme of things, if it was just a bunch of dudes shooting guns all the time, that'd be a problem. But to me, it doesn't matter.
I would argue that just because of like the way I first experienced Lara Croft secondhand watching my uncle and my dad play that game, and they like seriously just objectified the shit out of her polygonal ass, dude.
Oh man.
Like, and like the way that I first like watched that game, I definitely noticed that she was a woman.
I yeah,
I
I
guess.
I played with my sisters, and I have two sisters, so there was never any, yeah, she was wearing shorts and this and that, but I was more scared of the game more than anything, because
Yeah.
to like, I don't know, I was probably in like second grade or something. Tomb Raider 2 was pretty horrifying. So
Yeah.
so wait, I have just a brief question. So when you go, so you have games like Dragon Age and stuff like that where you can pick the gender of your character. Have you ever tried being the opposite gender, so being a female in our case?
I
Just out
have
of
not.
curiosity.
Honestly, I
Okay,
have not.
you've not,
No, and
Jack?
not because I won't, not because I don't want to, but in games like Skyrim and things like that, they give you a blank slate, a character that says nothing because they want it to be you. And like
Yes.
if I'm playing as a woman, I feel like I wouldn't be immersed so much as I would be if I would. I mean, that's why you can make your face, like you want to look like you because you're gonna go yell at dragons and stab them in the face. That's the only reason. I'm not saying I wouldn't. I'm just saying I hadn't.
Yeah, I would say that to start off, I don't like the only games where I actually customize avatars are literally like I don't even play Skyrim or any kind of game like that, so I can't even remember the last time that I gave one of those a shot. But oh shit, dude, I don't know if we may have just for listeners, we have a storm going on in the middle of this podcast, so we may have had no, we did not. But I don't
Okay,
We're
play
back.
too
yeah.
many. We're back. No, I don't play too many of those games, but if I'd probably be with Logan. I don't know how I would feel. I'd probably want to closely resemble myself as much as possible.
Okay. I mean, this is coming from personal experience. I'll have friends who don't have a life, and I might be talking about myself too, who will just be like, all right, I played the game once. Fuck it. I'm going to make a female character and see if it changes anything. So I did that with Dragon Age Origins because it's one of my favorite games of all time. And I played that shit like 3, 4 times through already.
Now, not to cut you off, but now let's say if there were two routes for the game, and one was a man, you play as a man, and then you could play as a woman in a different form, sort of, and the game played out differently, then I would be tempted to play both. I probably would play both sides, but some people, especially in like the online MMO space, play as women, like avatars, for the completely wrong reasons. Um, like they're playing for hours on end, so they claim they want something to look at when they're playing. So that, I mean, there's pros and cons to playing as women in video games.
Yeah.
What do you guys think of, like, kind of on that note, people who play PvP and are males, but are in fact playing as women, acting as a woman to other players that they talk to online?
There's a bit of a gray area. So some people do that. So there's been research that shows that people who play like MMOs, Warcraft, EverQuest, what have you, whatever your poison of choice is, that they can, especially like men who plays women or women who plays men, are trying to express a certain part of their persona, which is easier to do through a character of the opposite sex. On the other side, there are also people like the troll. So there's that.
That makes sense. I don't know.
Because
there's also, I think that people try and portray like stereotypes of either a male or a female if they play as the opposite sex, like perceived things that they think they should do, but aren't necessarily the things they would do if they were to be playing as their same sex.
Right. Not to.
And, so for anyone who likes to troll, I'm actually referencing an actual article, Sherry Turkle, Cyberspace and Identity. I actually do research on this, so just to clarify, I'm not pulling shit out my ass right now.
To go back to something that you said, Nick, right when we started, was that course you took in video game history. I've read a few books and done a lot of reading on the history of video games, and it's really surprising because there's only one woman that I can think of that was essentially a developer way back then that made a pretty large impact, and her name is Roberta Williams, and she was pivotal to the King's Quest games, and she made Phantasmagoria. I'm pretty sure everyone knows what that game is.
Yeah.
For how strange it was, but other than that, there really were no women back then. Well, it's now that more and more women are starting to finally get into the workspace of the video game industry.
Well, what do you think about? Not to cut you off, but this is like probably the biggest example right now. Would be I think her name's Julie Ehrman, the Ouya founder, is literally a woman. She's like the CEO. Yeah. I mean, she's a CEO of like the Ouya Android console, and she takes charge of the Kickstarter. She's obviously heavily involved with development. Like, I don't know. I think that's pretty cool. But at the same time, yeah, I don't want to act like surprised.
Also, I mean, it's not really changed. I mean, too much in terms of the developers from the past. There's always one or two who make a big impact, but I mean, how often do you read something like Game Informer and they always interview a developer or someone, an artist? How often do you see, or project leads? How often do you see, a female stepping into that role?
No, it's very true.
It doesn't happen often, but when you say something like that, it makes me think of 343 Studios, and most of their leads are women.
Yes.
And they just made one of the best, the highest rated Halo games. Well, almost seen as the best Halo game. So there's obviously some great work being done.
Yeah.
Yeah, Naughty Dog as well, I think, has a number of like female leads in like their creative department. And obviously they just came out with The Last of Us, which So, insta plug, 8bitfoundation.com review, but continue.
But what I was going to say is, nope, lost it. Go ahead. I lost
Well,
it.
what I was about to say is, I wasn't necessarily pointing out that. Just want to clarify something because I realize it could be taken the wrong way. I'm not saying that men are better developers than women. I'm saying it's still a very male-centric part of the industry, I should say.
Well, yeah, and going off of that, let's be honest. Like, it might not be a large margin, but most people that play video games are men. That's by the books. You can honestly
No,
say that
definitely.
without, yeah.
Up until
And
recent times, yes.
right,
I mean, it's just now starting
getting,
to take off.
yeah, it's getting very close, like almost 50-50. But most people that play games are men, and most people that play games don't want to make them. So through those gaps, of course, the people that are going to dominate the workspace that involve that medium are going to be men.
Yes.
And it's
Yeah.
unfortunate because you read a lot of very, very unfortunate stories of like workplace harassment and things like that from people. Um,
Yeah, especially, I don't know if you guys read, like, there's like, apparently E3 is a major problem for female journalists just
I
because
read
they get
about
like,
that. Yeah.
yeah, they get just harassed and they people literally think they're like booth babes or whatever when they walk up to them, and they're just trying to interview them, but instead they get like sexually harassed or verbally assaulted with, all this shit.
Yeah,
But
that's a real problem in general. I think that the culture is very male. I mean, most of like you go to like a cosplay event or like a industry event like this, and like you've got booth babes, you've got people in cosplay. Like it's just like a perception problem. I think and a lot of people that play games, I would venture to say, that are not socially equipped.
yeah, I would
So
say yeah,
I'm
a
gonna
good
say
like
that.
a good 52%, so the greater majority,
Yeah,
definitely.
I mean, there are idiots out there, of course, but I would venture to say that most people don't, take video games very seriously, and they kind of just like, I don't know, have no respect for each other or women in general. So it's
I
a
think
problem.
something that like we've talked. I know I've talked to Logan about before, but I haven't talked to Nick about explicitly. Would be I think from like a journalism perspective, especially we're writing on the site every week, things like that, and you see sites like IGN who are literally they're partnered with Ask Men and dating sites that are actually catered towards men. So a lot of their articles will literally be top 50 hottest chicks in gaming or whatever. But I would challenge any editor in chief, any editor in general, any writer, that if you have a site and you're going to do that, you need to flip around the same day and have top 20 hottest guys in gaming as well.
Yeah,
You know what I
that's
mean?
Yeah.
fair. That's fair.
I think I don't know. I just
It's not
think
even
that
an issue of fairness. It's just an issue of not being a jackass. I mean,
Yeah, I think
yeah.
Mario would make the top 10.
Well, no.
that
That
mustache
being
man.
said, though, I'm
That
not saying
mustache.
either one of those. I'm not saying either one of those is like some kind of Stone Age article. Like I would enjoy reading either of those and probably writing one because it's funny.
I honestly, I feel
But
like I saw one of those articles like very recently. You know,
yeah,
yeah, like
it's.
I don't know where, but I feel like I've read something along those lines very recently, and I'm
I
not going
feel
to
like
say where.
I feel like one of them surfaces like probably I'd go as far as to say maybe every 2 weeks somewhere on the internet there's an article, a list of some kind with top best or whatever. So
Yeah.
Yeah, because everyone loves lists. Everyone.
I know, right? I mean
They're
they're
the
fun.
easiest pieces of journalism to write. Top 10, whatever. It's all opinion.
I
Yeah.
What do
just
you guys
yeah.
What do you guys think of? Because I'm gonna kind of break off here and go ahead and say that I think that games like um, what's it called, Beyond Two Souls, developers like David Cage, I think they purposely. I feel like if there wasn't any criticism, people wouldn't go out of their way to actually make a female protagonist, and I think people are sort of using that to seem more, edgy and they're a little more I don't know. I'm not sure what the word is, but
No, it's a hip thing for sure. People are
yeah,
trying to
It's
I feel
a
like
it's a
I feel
fan
like
service almost.
it's good that people are doing it, but like you said, Nick, earlier, that I feel like possibly David Cage and Quantic Dream are kind of using Ellen Page as like the inverse of what they would be using if there was no like where are the women at, you know. I think they're using it just for that.
Yeah.
I don't think they decided let's get an actor and then Ellen Page popped up and they said, well, she'll fit this. I think they're like this is going to be a women like a woman's story.
Mm-hmm.
So and
Is
I
is
don't think that's right. I think if it fits the story, you should put it in. I don't think you should put it in there and acknowledge the fact that there's a problem. Just
gameplay first?
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
and
Yes.
then
I mean, and another thing that I noted in the article I put up today is, it's another thing. You can put it in there because it makes sense with the gameplay or it makes sense with the story. There are also people who put it in because just the market has started demanding more. So not necessarily fan service, but like all of a sudden that massive, what was 90% of the market is now 50% of the market. Like
yeah,
all of a sudden, instead of it being 14 to 20-year-old males drinking Mountain Dew, eating Doritos, now it's a little more of everybody, and so you need
I
to.
think I think more girls, especially, are definitely coming out of the woodwork, like into the gaming space than ever before. But at the same time, there's still a little like hesitation. Like when I went to the Best Buy E3 event thing for Nintendo, there was maybe it was pretty much all dudes. Like there was maybe like two girls there, but
Yeah. That's about the gist of it. At any game event that you go to is mostly guys. If there's cosplay, there will be girls. But if it's like a midnight launch, it's mostly guys.
yeah.
And I'm not sure why. It's unfortunate that there could be a stigma, but that's just in my experiences, it's been mostly guys.
I think that like it starts with the games too, though, especially with if you look at even the two biggest blockbusters from this spring and summer, Last of Us and BioShock. They don't mean to, but they put the girl in a partner position that's like not the main. It's like a helper. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it's kind of like an offhanded slight to like the role of the woman. Like you can advise me and do all this thing, but the man is gonna do all the action kind of stuff.
right.
but at
It
the
kind
same
of
time, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like most of these blockbusters don't really take those risks because they want to make the money because they put so much of an investment in it, and it makes me think of there's Assassin's Creed, and then there's the one for the Vita, the handheld version, and of course that one has the female protagonist. You know that it's interesting that
Yeah,
they wouldn't make a female protagonist after like how many games and then put it on a
Lot.
console. No, they put it on the handheld, just like a buffer.
it's a great point. Yeah,
I mean, but what I was about to say
no,
is I
that's
haven't
definitely a great
played The
point.
Last of Us or Bioshock yet. Yet, it's gonna happen eventually. But so I don't really know the roles of the characters. But is it like where it would have been in the past, where they're just some sort of, from what I've read, what's her name, Elizabeth in Bioshock? She's actually kind
Yeah, it's
of,
Elizabeth and Ellie.
useful.
No, these are. I mean, from what I've seen of The Last of Us, and I've played Bioshock two times, two and a half technically. Um, there's they're by no means Ashley from Resident Evil 4. If
Yeah, they're
either
not
of
like
you have
some
played
sort
that
of
game.
simpering, idiotic, just
No,
sort
no,
of
no, no,
there.
no. No, they're
Yeah,
not. I didn't
so
mean to make it sound like
yeah,
they're not trivialized at all. Like the developers definitely didn't make them seem like naive or dumb, but
Exactly.
they do have a role nonetheless, and it's not the main character.
No,
yeah.
you're absolutely right. Their roles are there, but they are absolutely positively secondary.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
But
And
it's
I don't.
also, I mean, I hate to be
It's
that
hard.
guy, but also baby steps. It's not like you can. I mean, this is at the risk of sounding almost sexist. Just like you can't make this much of a dramatic change just by saying, you know what, fuck it, let's make all characters like lead characters female for a while. It has to be slowly build up and make sure that it works with the game.
Well, it's back to what you said earlier too about. I mean, these games are great, and they obviously sold tremendously well, and you can't cater to an opinion just to do it. So like
Yeah.
if the partnerships work and they do, then they don't need to change. But at the same time, and we're throwing like irony and like just mishmashing, but I don't know. There's a lot to it.
It's okay. It's the
And
internet.
with a game like BioShock, like I said, I played it a bunch, and even if from the get-go that the protagonist was a woman, it wouldn't have changed. Honestly, if you took the game as it was and you played as Elizabeth and Booker was the one throwing you guns and this and that and everything, the game would have been the same. It honestly would have been the same
Yeah.
when you boil it down.
But at the same time, and I haven't played that game, but I did, obviously film the spoiler cast and all that. So, but I mean, Booker isn't gonna get locked in a tower with a bird,
Yeah.
you know.
It's true. That's
So
true.
it's like, I don't know. And then it ties back into what Nick was saying. I mean, the story and the gameplay have to go hand in hand, and you can't kind of like screw with
That's your
one.
Nintendo.
Yeah, but
I think
yeah.
I think it's easy for Miyamoto to say that now, like I was saying earlier, because I know for a fact back then it wouldn't have been the case.
Yeah.
Right now that it's okay and everyone's, for the most part, accepting, I think it's easy to say that. But will they do it? I would be surprised, very surprised if they did it. Saying is different than doing.
Yes.
I'd be very shocked if they actually did that. I'd be like supportive, absolutely. I mean, you have to change it up,
But there would still be a bit of an uproar. I mean, not necessarily among gamers, but especially among people who don't game. Like if you had, as you said before, if Mario is rescuing Luigi and they're not, this is back in the past, or even now a modern day equivalent,
Mario,
to a man rescuing a man, and they're not brothers and they're not friends, and it's a romantic thing. It would still be, especially from non-gamers, stuff like that. Even from some gamers, there would be a bit of an uproar. To say the least.
I mean, and even not from when it's not from Nintendo, there were issues with Mass Effect. There were issues with Star Wars: The Old Republic. I mean, it's happening as recently as like a year ago. People are about this stuff. So
there's a lot of, I think that was handled well though, like especially in the Star Wars realm and like the EA, BioWare Online stuff, was that the fact that same-sex relationships in any manner were okay, but people had to just like go for them. They didn't like offer it to you. It wasn't like, here's a game where you can do same-sex stuff. It was like, here's a game that allows that if you go look for it.
Yeah.
Which is the right way to handle it.
Right.
Which is one of the things I love about BioWare, personally. I mean, that's more my fanboyism coming out, but
yeah,
because they try at least to put that into a lot of their games. So sort of trend setting, maybe, kind of.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say that so much as just like staying. I mean, we are in 2013. Like, I don't know. That kind of thing should just be not automatic now, but yeah, you got to consider everyone for sure.
The hardest thing about this, I think, is that the change has to come not from games like Shovel Knight. No offense to Shovel Knight, because I will be buying that game.
Oh,
no, agreed.
Or games like can't even think of any other ones that make that an option. It has to come from the AAA titles. Those are the ones that get the most. They get the most attention.
But that also, they're AAA titles, and so they're less likely, especially if it's Activision, EA. They're not going to want to take risks.
Oh yeah, I absolutely agree that would be a large risk, but it's hard, like especially now, since I've been following all this stuff for a long time, and like being this age, you're watching with like kind of a glance, like okay, like what is all this, and then you see like Call of Duty or Battlefield. It's like you couldn't put one woman in the game, like not one. Like why does it always have to be dudes with guns and dogs and knife fights?
And there are plenty of girls that I know, especially at work or even at school. They might not own the game, but their significant other, the person they live with, plays it, and they like to play it sometimes.
Right.
Like,
yeah,
I don't know. think they should have to like plunk the headset on and act like a dude every time they do.
Seriously.
Like, but then there's the point. Gears of War had a girl, didn't it? In
Yeah.
like the second or
Yeah.
third one.
The
I
third-
mean, the third one she was playable. In the second one, and in the first one, I think she was just kind of. I didn't play the first one, but the second one, she was the one who gave you like mission objectives and stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, even in the third one, like she wasn't necessarily.
And Epic
99%
Studios,
of the time, I'm playing as Marcus
Yeah.
or Dom. So
but point in fact though, like Epic Studios is one of probably the like perceivably most male-oriented. They push out some like straight up like Bulletstorm, just like a bunch of like 80s action hero shit.
So what you're
Yeah.
saying is their recycling bins consist mostly of Mountain Dew cans?
What's that?
Saying? I said
Yeah.
you're essentially saying their recycling bins consist mostly of Mountain Dew cans.
Yeah,
Yeah,
pretty
Doritos
much.
bags.
I don't know. It's a crazy topic, for sure. But
I think 343 did a pretty good job with it because, like I said, their studio had a good portion of female leads, and they had a few female characters in the game, and they didn't make a big deal about it. Like they
Mhm.
just like put them in there, like that's what you should be doing. Just put them in there. Like you don't have to give them a lead role or like make it a big deal. You know, just put them in there. You know, it's not that big a deal.
well, I think while you're writing the story and you're in the creative process, especially just straight up from a story perspective, if you're thinking, oh, well, he goes here, and who should he talk to? Like, who's that person in that role that gives him this objective? And it should just be a matter of like this or that, whether or not that's a man or a woman,
Yeah.
or whether or not the character in question that needs to do these things should be a man or a woman. So, I don't know. I think you're right. Just put them in there if they need to be there. But if they don't need
Yeah.
to be there, then
Goes with the
don't.
story, goes with the gameplay, then by all means, put them in there.
Yeah.
But don't do it as a
Sure.
fan service or as a critic service.
Exactly.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that's a wrap, guys. This has been the 8-Bit Hangout episode 9. I'm Jack with Logan and Nick, and 8bitfoundation.com. We'll see you next week.